A reading from Genesis. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, so dismayed were they at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. He said, "I am your brother, Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house, the ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me and do not delay. You shall settle in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, as well as your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there, since there are 5 more years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have will not come to poverty. And now your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my own mouth that speaks to you. So you must tell my father how greatly I am honored in Egypt, and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, while Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after this, his brothers talked with him. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. A gospel reading from the 15th chapter of Luke. Glory to you. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. "Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sheep.' Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." The Gospel of the Lord.
Grace and peace to you, my friends in Christ. Back in 2022, I led a canoe trip with all freshman boys to the Boundary Waters. Now, memorably, one of the canoes swamped within the first 15 minutes on a calm stream. Yep, some of you remember that. It soaked our equipment, including all of our tents, so we needed to dry out for a day on Shell Lake, and this became known as the trip to Shell and back. This year, now a few years older and much more experienced, the majority of the group that came on my trip this summer had been on a few trips since 2022, including 2 from that original group. And so this year, we entered on Fall Lake, and we would return to Fall Lake by Friday. And honestly, as long as history didn't repeat itself, the don't fall in would have been all I cared about. I would have considered this to be a success. This was kind of a redemption tour in many respects. But one of the highlights for me was having a couple adults on this trip too. So Paul and Bill on the left end of this picture joined me and the rest of the youth as we had a great time exploring and being able to talk with them about what's going on in their lives. What are they up to? It was a true highlight to hear what God was up to in their lives as well. This trip was about spending time with friends and fishing, honestly. Lots and lots and lots of fishing. And so because of that, because of fishing, this actually helped with a lot of our decision making, especially when we were trying to figure out what our daily goals would be. So we were planning to paddle all the way up to Basswood Falls on our second day. That was kind of the goal of the trip, to do some exploring up at Basswood, one of the cooler sites available on this route. And instead of bringing all of our stuff with us up to the Canadian border, we decided that we were going to make a base camp. We really liked our first campsite, and we said, we'll stay here for 2 nights. And so on the second day, we got on the water bright and early, and we headed up towards Basswood Falls. And so after 2 hours of paddling, it was time to start looking for a spot to take a stretch. One of the guys in my canoe was like, hey, my butt's a little sore. Can we stand up and stretch a little bit? And so we saw this little tiny island in front of us with a nice shore to stop at. And as we approached, a giant eagle was like, oh man, you're coming to my place, so I'm going to move along. So he soared right over our heads, and we got out, and the boys got all their fishing gear out and they went to work. And then we kept watching as the eagle would kind of like hover around and try to find some lunch as well. And he was having about as much success as the boys were that day. He was empty-handed. But one thing I noticed while we docked on that island was just how strong the wind was that had pushed us to where we were. So with the wind and the current, I'd noticed we had definitely benefited from a tailwind to get where we were. And I knew that we still had a bit of a ways to go before we were going to get to Basswood Falls. So we all, after the guys had fished for a little bit, we had lunch, and then our canoe guide, Grant, pulled us all in for a conversation. And he set his map down in front of us, and he laid it out on a rock for us to see just where we were. So there was our campsite, and then here's where we were. We paddled a long way, but we still had a little bit of a ways to go to get up to Basswood. So he wanted us to talk about this. Should we keep pushing towards our goal and get to Basswood, or is there another plan that we should consider? Now, Joseph's brothers, still back in Canaan with their father Jacob, were about to embark on a journey as well. Maybe not quite like the Boundary Waters, but they also had a journey to take. They were on a journey to reunite with a brother that they assumed was dead. And so this is a trip that they would take 3 times in order to get food due to this severe famine. It does not take them 40 years to make this journey back and forth from Egypt to what will someday now become the Promised Land. But as Jacob sends these 10 brothers to buy food, Joseph, now a high-ranking official, recognizes them, but they have no reason to suspect that this is their brother. He's Pharaoh's second in command. And so he gives them grain, but really Joseph, without giving anything away to his brothers, really wants to see Benjamin. So he asks some leading questions like, are you the only brothers? And they have to admit, no, one of the brothers is no longer with us. And then we have a younger brother, Benjamin. And so in order to be able to see Benjamin, he imprisons Simeon and says, you can have Simeon back if you bring Benjamin back so I can meet this big family of yours. Now, once home, the brothers tell their father Jacob what's happened and that the only way to get Simeon back is to bring Benjamin because Pharaoh's second in command, the one who's in charge of food, insists upon it. So they eat all their food. And finally, when it's like, wow, we're out of food, we got to go back, Jacob sends them with double the money, and he sends some gifts to try to persuade this high-ranking official. He's worried and terrified he's going to lose Benjamin like he had lost Joseph. And so they show up, and Joseph's overwhelmed with emotion as he sees Benjamin. But he kind of hides it for a little bit. And then he's like, I'm ready to send y'all back again. And he sets the brothers up again. He has one of his stewards put his silver cup in Benjamin's bag so it looks like Benjamin's a thief. Now this time, once they're kind of caught in this act that they were unsuspecting, Judah, the brother, begs for mercy from this official. And so finally, we come to this moment where we just heard Joseph tell the story, where the official confesses his big secret, that he is their brother Joseph. How did he get here? How did he rise to the top? Well, what we learn about Joseph from the story, he's an attractive young man. He's powerful, and clearly others have deemed him to be blessed by God, especially with this power to interpret dreams. A lot of good things happen to him, and especially within the Pharaoh, he's able to really benefit from this. So despite some awful circumstances that got Joseph into this situation, the Pharaoh sees how wealth and good fortune has been brought to him because of this guy from this Hebrew from Canaan. And so all of a sudden the Pharaoh's like, wow, I like this guy so much, I'm going to let you marry someone within my family. And so in Genesis 44, we get birth announcements. Joseph has a couple of sons. His first son's name is Manasseh. For God has made me forget all my hardship and my father's house. He literally names his kid, thank you for helping me forget how bad my childhood was. Think about that. That's awful. Like, that's his name. Do you think Joseph is still holding a bit of a grudge? What about the second kid? This has got to be some really nice name, right? Ephraim. Okay? For God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortunes. Even though I should have died or been killed, God still provided for me. These two names are so significant that when the promised land is finally decided what all the tribes of Israel are going to be called, two of those tribes are named after Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. The other 10 are going to be after the other brothers, but then we also have the Levites who won't be because they're priests and they don't inherit land. Pretty incredible how all of this kind of comes around. Just in the naming of his kid, he's able to articulate some basic theology. When things are bad, Joseph remembers that God doesn't forget him. When things are good, Joseph recognizes that he's been blessed abundantly. So what's the theological statement that he makes when he has this big reveal with his brothers? Is it an eye for an eye? Is it now it's time for some retribution? I'm going to make you brothers my servants. You're going to be my slaves? No. Out of his hardship, out of his misfortunes, God did something amazing in Joseph's life. And Joseph recognizes that God was there. In fact, he even says, it wasn't you who sent me here, but it was God. Wow. Is that how God operates? So then what do we do when God doesn't intervene, doesn't have everything turn out just right? There's a little bit more to this story. Professor Tim McNitch wrote, even though Joseph credits God with using his brother's treachery to save Egypt, Joseph still names their sin and says, I'm your brother Joseph, whom you sold into slavery. A little bit of a truth bomb that he drops on them. Human agency, responsibility, and accountability aren't erased. Joseph forgives his brothers, not because they are pawns in some unstoppable divine cosmic plan, but as a gift of grace. Really? This is a story of grace? Yeah. Grace doesn't forget evil. Grace doesn't excuse evil. But grace releases the need for revenge and retribution. Think about your own heart. How do you feel with someone that you're having some tension with when you get to that point where that grace can help relieve that? Grace is what can lead to a future path of reconciliation. Putting that through the lens of Jesus, isn't the parable of the lost sheep something that's really turning this whole story on its head? Oh, the lost sheep, that's obviously about Joseph, that one brother who's lost, and God continually rescues Joseph. Nah. The parable of the lost sheep's about the brothers. Those brothers are like this little sheep stuck in the mud. They didn't realize that they were the ones who needed saving. They didn't know that they were the ones who needed to be saved from their guilt, saved from their fear of vengeance and retribution. saved from their lives feeling that they weren't enough for their dad, feeling like they were overlooked and lost. And now, Joseph recognizes them and tells them God was with them all along. How does that level of grace transform our lives? It certainly made a difference on my canoe trip. So there we were. There was the map, okay? Now, our guide, Grant, explained that the time to get to Basswood was probably going to be another 2 hours. And once we got there, we now realized that there was a pretty strong wind at our back and a current that was working for us. Well, to get back to our campsite, guess which way that wind would still be blowing? Right at us. We had some discernment to do. It was going to take a lot longer than 4 hours to get back. So the adults on the trip kind of presented the choices, but then we let the boys ponder what we should do. Really, their first question was, well, aren't we going to go fishing? And we're like, yeah, no matter what, the plan is to go fishing, but you might not have as much time to go fishing if we don't consider our options here. So the boys talked it over, and they agreed, we think it's better to head back right now. We'll have more time for fishing. We don't want to get exhausted for our last full day. It took us a whole another 3 hours with another rest stop on the way back just to be able to get to our campsite that night. And so at the end of the night, as we were debriefing how the day went, and we were talking about where we were seeing God, they talked about that. They knew that that was helpful to have God helping them in that decision. The following day, the boys had to face another difficult decision. Stay at a campsite that we'd already claimed, or trust a couple of us adults who said that there might be a better campsite if they were willing to do a little bit extra work. The boys listened to their options, and then they agreed that the next site would be worth going to. Had a beautiful sandy beach, and they caught 20 fish that night. Look, it's easy to see God in the Boundary Waters, right? Like those mountaintop experiences. Wow, yeah, go to the Boundary Waters to be with God. It's true. Maybe it's that eagle that's leading the way, or it's the beauty of nature. Yet what I've seen on many of these trips, where I truly see God, is in the decisions. It's in the relationships. It's in the trust that's formed by working together. It's in the gift of making wise choices by listening to what your body can do. And each night, the boys were able to reflect where they saw God each day. And those expressions of God moments helped show the wisdom that they were gaining and some of the depth of their own faith, which was obviously helpful on the trip, but we could also tell would be valuable in their day-to-day lives. To know that God was with them in the challenges. To give thanks to God through life's blessings. A group decision on a canoe trip might not be comparable to seeing Joseph having God see God in prison and interpreting dreams and all of that. But what I thought was a common thread through all of those canoers this summer was this sense to know that God was with us. Jesus is always listening. And Christ is showing us a path to be able to have freedom within our own hearts. And so maybe that level of grace, that depth of grace, is a great reminder for us today. We're in a change of season. But no matter what is happening in our lives, no matter what thoughts are on our hearts or whatever we're weighing right now, the most important thing to remember is that God is with us, and God's grace is what carries us forward, each step and paddle along the way.